I am delighted now to have the opportunity to address you all. So we've been working on the local nature recovery strategy, or I have since the start of September, a lot behind the scenes, getting up and running, getting people together, following following the guidance to get to this point. So for those who don't know me, my name's Paul Killip. I'm the local nature recovery strategy project manager covering Leicestershire, Leicester City and Rutland. And today is really about introducing you to the local nature recovery strategy, but also to me, opening up those lines of communication, because in a few months from now, by July, we will have hopefully completed our engagement and know what our local nature recovery strategy looks like. Now, it'll need to go through a lot of approval processes, but in July, you should have a really clear idea of what our strategy is seeking to do. Tonight, I'm joined by Georgia, who is a consultant working for a company called Truman Change, who are leading on the development and delivery of our communications and engagement strategy, doing an absolutely fantastic job. So today marks really a significant milestone for us because we're able to finally discuss and involve you in the development of the local nature recovery strategy for our area. And your presence tonight underscores the importance of that and the collaborative approach and community engagement that we want to do in shaping the strategy. Before I forget, I just need to do some housekeeping matters. So we are recording, so can you ensure that your microphones are muted throughout the presentation just to minimise any background noise and just ensure clarity for all the participants. You can choose the chat function to ask questions. I won't be able to see that, so if Georgia and Lucy again, I'll spring to you, but if there's anything that you feel you can answer in the chat, please feel free to. But if you do want to speak at any point or stop the presentation because you have a burning question, there's a raise a hand option along the top of your screen, and if you do that, Georgia will alert me to that and I'll take a pause so we can listen to you. We are recording this for future reference, so your participation and insights are really valuable. We will use the recording as a resource for anybody who's unable to join us tonight, and I expect the presentation itself to last less than an hour, but with plenty of time allocated for questions and discussions. We're going to give you a very short break from me talking with a very short and hopefully fun quiz to break up the presentation. It is just me presenting to you today. We don't have anybody here to talk specifically on BNG, which might be a hot topic, or any of the other areas that are aligning with local nature recovery strategy. But I have reached out to my colleagues in those areas for information today. If there are any questions which I can't answer, we'll capture them, we'll go and find the answers out, and we'll get back to you after the presentation. So once again, thank you for joining tonight. Let's commence. Let me introduce you to the local nature recovery strategy for Leicestershire, Leicester and Rutland. So today I'm going to cover an introduction to the LNRS. I'll call it the LNRS now to save my voice. We all know what it is. What our strategy area is and what it contains, the process that we're following to develop our LNRS, and why we're developing it. So we'll take a quick look at the biodiversity declines across the UK, the impacts climate change is having on us, what we think the problem is, and how LNRS is a solution. Finally, we'll wrap up with how you can get involved, how you can influence the strategy and share your views. So let's start with the Environment Act, because that's where it all came from. The Environment Act 2021 states there's a duty on public authorities to have regard for the conservation of biodiversity under the Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act in 2006, and that extends to both conserving and enhancing. So the Act introduces all of these following mechanisms. Local nature recovery strategies are one of those, and they're there to support nature recovery networks. There is strengthened duty on local authorities, there are conservation covenants and protected site strategies and species conservation strategies, which are there to support the design and deliver of strategic approaches, basically looking to deliver better outcomes for nature. There are regulations on businesses. and they're required to establish systems of due diligence for each of their regulated commodities used in their supply chains and report on due diligence. There's prohibiting of larger UK businesses for using commodities associated with wide-scale deforestation. And of course, there is BNG, which introduces a mandatory minimum 10% biodiversity net gain requirement for all new developments that are subject to the Town and Country Planning Act of 1990. We're expecting from 2025 that BNG requirements will begin to apply to nationally significant infrastructure projects. So these mechanisms are designed to facilitate contributions to the government's commitment to achieving its national environmental targets for air, water, biodiversity and waste. And the local nature recovery strategy is just one of those mechanisms. So as well as our LNRS, you may be involved in several of these. So I think it's just good to know at this stage that they are contributing towards some of the same targets. And collectively, these will also contribute to the international commitment of protecting 30% of land and sea by 2030, the 30 by 30 global commitment. That's just a very quick introduction to where it's come from. So the strategies themselves are spatial strategies, and they cover all of England. They're designed to drive nature's recovery and wider environmental benefits. And what we have done and we are doing is mapping the most valuable existing areas for nature. So those aligned with the current planning policy. So there'll be conservation sites, national nature reserves, irreplaceable habitats, local wildlife sites, just for example. And together through this process, we will establish priorities for the LNRS. What we need to do, and we are going to try to do through partnership, is balance between achieving environmental goals as well as farming and land management, housing development, health and well-being, and several other factors across several other sectors, finding solutions which can be delivered in cooperation to achieve our targets. And then through those priorities, through that agreement, we will map proposed specific actions in specific areas for nature's recovery. What the local nature recovery strategies don't do is they don't force the owners and managers of the land identified to make any changes at all. The government is encouraging action through opportunities for funding and investment. These are non-binding strategies, and it's not a delivery plan, although we will come on to delivery in a little bit. We do have one eye on delivery and creating those strong partnerships to deliver the strategy. They won't put red lines on maps, but again, when we come onto the map in a bit, you'll see, and we'll talk through how we will identify priority areas and show them on the map without putting red lines on. They don't prevent anybody using land in any way, and they don't grant permissions. So they are a strategy, and what we're trying to say really is the LNRS can't be forced on anybody, but we're hopeful that the approach we're taking through collaborative development will actually end up with priorities and measures that everybody wants to deliver, or at least can get behind and support the delivery of. So this is straight from the statutory guidance provided to us by Natural England via DEFRA, and just to let you know what needs to be in the strategy and why we're following this process. So the guidance states that we need to agree the priorities for nature's recovery, and I say we, everybody in this room and beyond. We'll map the most valuable existing areas for nature and map specific proposals for creating or improving habitat for nature and wider environmental goals. And the strategy will form two parts. There will be a statement of biodiversity priorities supported with a local habitat map, which will be an interactive map that will be public facing, and you'll be able to see where these areas of importance are. We're currently working through solutions and hope to have an interactive map to share with people over the coming months, starting in May when we do our in-person face-to-face engagement. The statement of biodiversity and its priorities is made up of a description of the strategy area and its biodiversity, supported with the opportunities for recovering or enhancing biodiversity in the area. Then there will be supporting lists of priorities for recovering or enhancing biodiversity, including all those other environmental benefits, and another list with a proposal for all of the potential measures relating to delivering those priorities. And we aim to have our, it was on the other slide, but we'll aim to have completed all of that work by July this year. It will go through an approvals process starting in September this year, and we aim to publish our strategy. Well, it goes to the Secretary of State after the 2nd of July 2025. You'll know what the strategy looks like in July 2024, but it won't be enforced or won't go into publication until the following year. Okay, so this is just a quick overview of local nature recovery strategies. I'm sure many of you may be involved in more than one. There are 48 of them across the whole of England. So 48 responsible authorities. Leicestershire County Council is a responsible authority for Area 19 and represents Leicester City, the Rutland County Council, and also the 7 districts. These strategies cover the whole of England with no gaps at all, and each strategy will be designed to be local and have measures and priorities that reflect the region. But we know we need to work closely with our neighbouring responsible authorities to ensure that the measures and proposed actions at boundaries align with each other's priorities. So we're there, nicely highlighted in green. We have 8 neighbouring authorities, which are Staffordshire, Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire, Lincolnshire, Cambridgeshire, North Hants, West North Hants, and Warwickshire. We are part of a responsible authority Midland network who meet monthly to discuss progress. We're all at slightly different stages, but we all have the same deadline to publish around, well, it's spring, early summer 2025. As well as the Midlands network, we also have one-on-one working relationships with all of the areas, plenty of partnership working, and we have some smaller Midlands networks which we've set up ourselves to make sure that we're keeping each other informed of our progress. Working with the neighbours, we need to think about these cross-boundary workings and aligning our priorities and measures. So we need to consider, and we are considering, how land management and land ownership, species ranges and habitats are not confined to administrative boundaries. So as well as cooperating on actions for the present, we also need to build in climate change adaptation and mitigation to, for example, allow species migration due to climatic pressures, but also to help manage water sources and catchment areas and large areas of woodland like the National Forest. All needs to be taken into account. So we have to build these strong working relationships, not just with the responsible authorities, but with all of the key partners. With some of you who are here today, some of the land managers we've already spoken to. There are plenty of people who need to be involved in these decisions. So we are thinking about that, and we've been taking a deep dive, understanding our strategy area as well, and the opportunities and challenges that we have. So as a quick overview of Leicestershire, the city, and Rutland, we can see that we've got a mosaic of habitats, and we've used the most up-to-date data available to us to create a baseline habitat data layer, which we'll use as part of our engagement. For those who don't know, I can explain these different types of data afterwards, but we've made up our layer of the best data available, which is the most up-to-date Phase 1 and UK habitat data, has the National Forest Inventory 2021 and UK Priority Habitats Inventory. We've also used EA's vegetation LiDAR data and Natural England's Living England data. So I appreciate it doesn't copy well over into a PowerPoint, but hopefully you get the idea. It shows our core habitats really are mixed agricultural land. We have Leicester City, urban and rural towns and villages, and very important woodlands and forests, as well as wetlands, including major rivers, canals, lakes, reservoirs, catchments and ponds. This is just a starting point for our discussions on mapping, so we'll be able to show you this at an interactive level. These core habitats can be split down further into around 40 specific habitat types, and we will use this live version of the map to engage with audiences and show the rationale of why a priority area is being proposed as a priority area. We are going to use many other data layers, such as flood management plans, catchment areas, farms in stewardship, local plans, as well as BNG banks, as much as we can to really understand the opportunities and the constraints of our ecological modelling. We're going to take two approaches to modelling our data as well as doing an urban and rural map, so we can really look at those local challenges, especially in the urban areas. We know what we present on a landscape scale across agricultural land won't copy over for cities and market towns as well. So we want to take a very inclusive approach to that. I'll come onto the mapping a little bit later on. So as well as the local habitat maps, which are really the evidence-based models which we'll use, we're also introducing you to the very early stages of local nature recovery strategy development. And to make sure we make the right decisions, we need to engage with the broadest audience we can and ensure everyone's voices are heard and captured. So we're trying innovative ways to reach a broader audience. This is just one example of things that we're creating. We have some animations that just have just been created today, which will be going live soon as well. But making space for nature in Leicestershire, Leicester and Rutland is part of our new logo. It will follow the strategy through its development and also onto delivery plans. So that logo in the, I'm trying to think where you'll see it in the top right, top left on your screen, will sit on this strategy, and we want to make it as familiar. We want to drive energy behind it. We want it to be popular with our residents, and I want people to understand what it is. Making space for nature, the tagline comes straight from the Lawton report and the call to make space for nature. So we see our strategy as answering that call. We want the strategy development and the long-term delivery to have support and collective buy-in. So we're showcasing the LNRS in different ways to bring visibility to the strategy. So this is our first engagement map, and just a few key areas of interest that we pulled off that we wanted to bring to the public's attention, and we'll work on other versions focusing on urban areas and other key aspects. There is so much to put on a map, but for those who don't know, Leicestershire and Rutland Wildlife Trust do an incredible job across the strategy area currently, and Matt might correct me in a minute, but currently managing 35 nature reserves and over 1,200 hectares of rich and biodiverse land, woodlands and wetland areas. The National Forest, which spans not just our area, but up to Derbyshire and Staffordshire, doing incredible work, not just in creating forests, but also grassland and working with farmers. We really want the public and everyone to be aware the importance of agriculture here. So we are in the heart of agricultural England. There are over 2,000 farm holdings here covering over 190,000 hectares, providing food security for the nation. And incredible forests, the Charnwood Forest. We have the Harborough Woodland here today as well, so we need to get you on the map. Which are made up of parks, made up of a complete amazing geodiversity and biodiversity. The vital river networks of the Soar and the Reek, as well as the catchment area in the Lyfield Forest, which I believe has around 23 ancient woodlands in there. We couldn't put this map up without talking proudly around the Allerton project and the incredible work they do to engage farmers and show regenerative farming in our region and how it can be applied to help biodiversity in farming across not just our area but across the whole country. Dotting together all of this are over 1,000 local wildlife sites, with many more being put forwards at the moment. These really are the bread and butter of connectivity. And these are the areas where we might end up focusing on how to bring together those really important areas for nature and connect them together across the whole strategy area. And then finally on the map, how could we not talk about Rutland Water, the incredible site for nature and for tourism, globally important, home to over 25,000 wintering wildfowl. And the Wildlife Trust there managing around 1,000 acres and 9 miles of shoreline of the site. And obviously, if you haven't heard of it, you soon will. The internationally important Osprey project and the incredible success they have there, to the envy of many wildlife sites in other counties around the country. But this is just one map and just a few facts and points of interest. Since I've been working on this project since September, it really brought out the importance of wide-scale engagement and the broad audience. We have a very interesting area with lots of opportunities, and partnership working could bring all of that together. So anyway, we'll move on from that. A little break from me talking now, and I'll hand over to Georgia to see if you can take our quick quiz.
Thank you, Paul. Right, a quick quiz. So I've just posted it in the chat, but hopefully you can see this on screen now. Too, can you see this on screen now, Paul? Sorry, having a drink. Give me not a thumb yet. If you go to online, if you've got two screens, you can do it on your desktop, or you can do it on desktop anyway, or on your mobile, and go to menti.com, and you should be prompted to put a code in. That code 31877670. So hopefully most of you are there now, and you'll be waiting for the first question, which is: what percentage of the Leicestershire, Leicester and Rutland local nature recovery strategy area is covered by woodland? Is it 6%, 15, 27 or 32? Please do vote now. Any more for any more? If anyone joins late, the code and address is at the top of the screen here. Okay, so that's what, 5-6 votes in. Any more for any more? Actually, the correct answer is 6%. So well done to the half of you got that right. Next question. How many nature reserves, this is to see if you were listening, and I expect Matt will know this one. How many nature reserves are managed by Leicestershire and Leicestershire and Rutland Wildlife Trust? Is it 12, 35, 51 or 72? Anyone else going to vote? No. Well, yes, the answer is 35. Next question. What percentage of the area is covered by a site of special scientific interest? Is it up to 2%, 2 to 6%, 6 to 9 or 9 to 12%? Any more votes to come in? Yes. Okay. I'm afraid the answer is just 2%. Moving on, Paul mentioned the importance of agriculture in our area. So there are how many farm holdings? Is it 622, 1,395, 2,167 or 3,845? Again, I think you did get this figure earlier. Okay, everyone voted? Yep, that is full house. Correct answer. Thank you. Right, next. What's the most recently recorded number of sheep across Leicestershire, Leicester and Rutland? Is it 89,000, 294,000, 620,000 or a whopping 1.1 million? I do appreciate it. This may be a guess for some people. Any more votes? Okay, the answer is 294,000. So here's a few wildlife stats. What is the average lifespan, oh sorry, let's just say of Britain's only poisonous snake, the adder? Is it 2 years, 6 years, 12 years, or 15? There we go. Any more on this one? 15 years, apparently. And I must thank Matt, because some of this, well, all these are taken from the Wildlife Trust website. 15 years, I was astounded at that.
Yeah, but you haven't helped now. I don't know them.
Well, I won't be. I can't see who answered how you answered, so don't worry. I won't be naming and shaming. What speed can brown hares reach when fleeing from predators? 15 miles an hour, 24 miles an hour, 33 miles an hour, or 45 miles an hour? Answer is 45 miles an hour. Amazing. Oh, hang on. Don't look. What is the width of an adult osprey's wingspan? You probably just saw that, so. Yeah, my fault. I didn't hide that answer in advance. The answer is 1.6 meters. And last question. As you know from Paul's presentation so far, one of the key aspects of this is recording the species that we have got here in Leicestershire, Leicester and Rutland. So how many species do you think have been recorded in the area ever? Is it 600, 4,000, 13,000 or 21,000? Any more final answers? Okay, I shall reveal that the answer is 13,000. So that is the end of the quiz. There are no prizes, I'm afraid, just the joy of taking part. So that's me. I shall hand back to Paul. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Georgia. Thank you, everyone, for taking part in that as well. There's obviously a couple of points for doing the quiz, one for a bit of fun and to break it up, but also just to reflect on how interesting this strategy area is for us. There isn't a great deal of woodland cover compared to the national average as well as triple SIs. We, less than 2%, I believe. I think it's 1.8 in Leicestershire, if you take Rutland out. Which doesn't sound great, but then with over 13,000 species recorded here in the last century, and some of the information I'll share in a bit, it really is an interesting, diverse site. We need to also think about, and one of the reasons I put the sheep question in there, or requested it to go in there, was we think a lot about the strategy area as it being cereal, wheat, corn, crops like that. But there are, nearly 300 sheep. There's around 100,000 cattle, over 55,000 pigs, and 2.5 million poultry kept as well across the strategy area. And all of the measures that we might propose, all of the ways to connect up, might not be suitable across all land management techniques across all farms. So yeah, it was just sort of raise that point in the quiz as well. It's a great area with lots of opportunity, and let's carry on with the presentation. Thank you for doing that. Right. Lost my screen now. Can everyone see the presentation? No. You've got it, haven't you? There we go. Okay, right. So how are we developing our strategy? Why it's important? So Our approach has been to develop the local nature recovery strategy through cooperation and collaboration. We will continue to involve the right people at the right time. We started with a small team, treating this kind of as our pilot. It's our first go, so that the strategy is reviewable, and this is our first go. And the goal is to have the strategy written by September this year, but also to have established the proper governance structures that have helped us get there. And we will know who those people are, how they work together, and we'll be able to bring those people back together for future reviews. So we have a steering group at the top, which I'll show you who the members of that are, and a newly formed strategic reference group. But really, we've got this data management group, which is the keeper of the information that we're gathering. So we're using data to create, over the last few months, to create draft documents for wider consultation in the next few months. Our species group has been assessing all of those species records and habitat records, which our local record centre holds, against criteria provided by DEFRA and aligning to the IUCN Red List. So in our strategy area, we've identified around 915 species of plant and animal that meet the criteria of being at risk of extinction, near threatened, or locally important. That's many more species than we were expecting when, you know, especially when I came into the role and we were talking about Leicestershire being one of the most nature depleted counties in the country. Yet we find all of these species which are at risk and need conservation help. So we're currently prioritising that list. They've whittled it down to kind of an unconfirmed 650 species as they start to identify species which would benefit other species. And we'll touch on that a little bit later on. And then we have our comms group, our advisory group, which is well connected through our local government channels. We've also had support from Leicestershire Wildlife Trust, offering to publish an article for us, which we're very grateful for. But we would also welcome any support that you might be able to give us to reaching a wider audience. So Georgia here, who's consultant for Truman Change, would love to hear from you if you have any connections that we might not be aware of. And then finally, of those groups, I'll just mention the data mapping group. They have created our baseline habitat map, which I'll show you in a few slides. And we're just searching for an interactive solution that everyone can access. After we've done our engagement with you and you know all of the challenges and opportunities, constraints and considerations that we need to factor into this strategy, we will feed that information into our ecological models at rural and urban scale and identify priority areas. You'll see that map in July this year, but you'll have another chance to comment on it as it's being produced. So this isn't Leicestershire County Council that creating a strategy and directing it to everybody. This is a partnership. So we're made up, the steering group is made up of the bodies that are required as part of the statutory regulations. So that includes Leicestershire County Council, Leicester City Council and Rutland County Council, as well as supporting authorities, Natural England, and arm's length bodies, the Environment Agency, Forestry Commission and National Forest Company. We have a single nominated representative for all of the 7 districts at the steering group. We've also got representation at our newly formed strategic reference group. So this is a group which I'm really excited about, and we've called it a strategic reference group just to clarify, because it's to focus on the development of the strategy. But these are initial members which we hope will form part of a delivery group and future strong partnerships, helping to bring people together and access resources to deliver the strategy. So we brought together these reps as our initial members. So we've got representation from the steering group organisations, not necessarily the same people, and we've also been, I'm really pleased, been joined by Leicestershire and Rutland Wildlife Trust, the National Farmers Union and Country Land and Business Association. This is an initial list and we are seeking out other members to join this group. I know there's some people in here today who I'd be interested to talk to as well and get your thoughts. But this group will provide strategic guidance and help us understand the opportunities and challenges that different sectors face. So that will help us make decisions, and good decisions, before we go consulting with the wider audiences in May, June and July time. I've kept this slide in. So yes, just to focus a little bit on on these groups. So our data group, which is the keeper of all the information. So Kirsty Gamble at the Leicestershire County Council Records Centre is managing all of the data that's coming in. We have all of the guidance and regulation being reviewed, all of our species records and our data layers and map files all being managed here. And we've been really blessed with support for our area description. We've asked for different authors to bring together and bring to life our description of the strategy area. Thank you again to the Wildlife Trust, drawing on the living landscapes. We've used the national character areas as the foundation for describing our area, while the NFU have described the farming landscape for us, and we're working with others now to describe the forests, woodlands, geodiversity, hydrology, and urban and rural spaces. So we'll have an area description to consult with very soon, but we're hoping that it gets a lot of buy-in when we write the strategy up, because it will be written by key authors and experts in their field. And then our habitat and species group, as mentioned, they've identified over 900 species. They're currently prioritising them. We're meeting again tomorrow night, and in the next few weeks we will start to assign these species to habitat types and start to understand where our priority areas could be and what our strategy could look like. Okay, so why we're developing the LNRS, why do we need the local nature recovery strategy? I probably don't need to tell you all, so I've only got a couple of slides, but it's good to bring it home. This infographic has been taken from the 2023 State of Nature report, which was published back in September. And we can see just at a glance that despite ongoing efforts to halt the decline in biodiversity, it's a battle that's not being won. There are clear winners and losers, and sometimes the winners aren't necessarily the species you want to see increasing, but there are winners. But we're here to focus mainly on the declining species and find solutions at a local level to contribute to national targets for biodiversity and other environmental benefits. So 15% of species are now threatened with extinction from Great Britain, and that's just the species that have been assessed. Of the 8,431 species assessed, 133 have already become extinct from Great Britain, which is terrifying. And since the 1970s, we've seen species have seen their populations decrease more than they have increased. So 41% have now decreased, and nature species are found in 27% fewer places than before. It's a real problem, and that's one of the things the local nature recovery strategy is looking to address. And now I want to briefly talk on the changing climate as well and the impacts that's having. This is taken from the Met Office Climate Review from last year. Last year was one of the warmest on record, and at the same time it was the 11th wettest on record. We also saw the most storms since naming storms began. And it's really impacting everybody. The climate is impacting us, it's costing everybody. Everyone's trying to develop strategies and counteract the changing climate through mitigation and adaptation, simply because we have to do something and we need to do it together because it affects everybody. I was told last week that the average global temperature rise has now reached 1.2 degrees, but here in Leicestershire and Rutland, the average has increased 1.8 degrees, so more than the global average. And predictions say we're going to hit 4 degrees by the end of the century, which is quite terrifying to think what impacts that might have. Last year, 8 of the 12 months were warmer than average. It was the hottest June on record since the 1800s, but weirdly, July and August are now generally cooler and wetter. Scientists are telling us that this is 150 times more likely due to human-caused climate change, and we expect to reach or exceed these temperatures in around 33% of years going forward if the climate stays the same. So a bit of the problem then, why haven't we fixed it? The intense weather is 150 times more likely caused by humans. So the question is, how much of that can we actually reverse? I know everyone has environmental objectives, and there are some absolutely superb examples out there to be really proud of. But we do have a growing population, and that population has increasing demands for housing, food, water, jobs and services, and that's placing increasing pressure across all sectors to deliver. We all have bosses, we all need to do our jobs, we all need to deliver, and the environment as a whole often takes the brunt of actions, and that is resulting in biodiversity declines and weakened ecosystem services. We know what the primary drivers are for biodiversity, which is habitat loss, overexploitation, climate change, pollution, and invasive species. And because each sector has its own priorities and focusing on doing things in its own way, we really do have an uncoordinated response. We hear it a lot, we've put it in the slide, but we heard it recently from landowners. If we had more time, more money and more resources, we would do more. And we know that that's not always available for additional environmental measures. However, it's not all bad news. So we see the local nature recovery strategy as a solution, not the solution, but it's a solution, and it's one that we'll work on together. It's not about reinventing the wheel. It's about bringing together all of the initiatives, all of the science, all of the good work and all of the goodwill together under one umbrella in a coordinated response to fight biodiversity loss across our strategy area. So we want to identify existing priorities and plans from across all of the core sectors and find the common ground, so we can agree priorities and measures that can be delivered alongside or in support of existing measures. Coming together like this will create opportunities, especially for new partnerships. Here in the Leicestershire and Rutland, we don't have local nature partnerships, for example. Now, I'm not saying we will form one, but something along those lines will certainly come out of this. New partnerships, new friendships, which coming together will help provide access to knowledge and skills, more resources, and attractive for more funding. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to tailor our strategy around the local challenges and opportunities. We'll propose measures which are local and suited to us locally. They need to be ambitious, but they also need to be achievable and inclusive. People need to want to deliver them. It can't just be on incentives. There has to be a real reason behind delivering them. So we'll be looking for local action, which will also contribute to national environmental objectives. We want to get out, we want to learn more about the site, about the strategy area, and identify where nature-based solutions can solve problems. And then when we have all that information, we won't just map the importance areas for biodiversity, we will clearly identify where the right areas are to become of particular importance for biodiversity. So we're going to have really, really strong partnerships, and that is a key goal and how we're working together. And those strong partnerships will agree measures that work across sectors. That is the goal. But we also need, everyone will need financial support. So the government has generated a number of financial mechanisms to incentivise action for nature. Please don't ask me to explain them all. I can't comment in detail on these because I'm not an expert on these, but because I'm solely focused on the development of this strategy. But I can and do want to make you aware of them. We will take questions and take them away and get answers for you if you need them. I will talk a very small amount on biodiversity net gain because I appreciate it is aligning with the local nature recovery strategy. But we have biodiversity net gain now. There's also a strengthened duty on public authorities to conserve and enhance biodiversity. You're probably all familiar with ELMS, the environmental land management schemes. Peatland strategies probably won't factor into us here in our strategy area, but it exists. And there's tree planting and woodland creation grants, as well as Nature for Climate Fund, and the government and local governments are looking into private investment. I've heard there are trillions out there just waiting to be invested into nature recovery if we can find the right mechanisms to do that. Did want to touch on biodiversity net gain because this is an approach to development that leaves biodiversity in a better state than before. So if you weren't aware, from February this year, most major developments need to deliver BNG, and that means providing 10% net gain for biodiversity. This is achieved by delivering habitat on site, preferably, and if that's not possible, through buying and providing off-site biodiversity units. It's going to work really closely with LNRS, but I do want to make it clear that BNG is not the be-all and end-all for local nature recovery strategies. Local nature recovery strategies can be delivered in many, many ways, but BNG has come along and it is there to incentivise the delivery of it right now. The local nature recovery strategy, the way it will work, it will support that strategic approach to off-site delivery. So it will, through the mapping and modelling and data gathering and all of that evidence-based research that we're doing, it will identify priority locations and propose priority measures to take place in those locations. Those areas aim to expand and connect existing habitats, important habitats, and also provide wider environmental benefits. So the LNRS is directing where BNG can really have that biggest impact. It will play the role in BNG by determining what's known as the strategic significant multiplier within the biodiversity metric. And that really provides an incentive for developers to align with the local nature recovery strategy when they're choosing the location for off-site BNG units. So this is obviously really good to know if you're a developer considering site selection, if you're a landowner planning to sell for biodiversity units, if you're a local planning authority reviewing BNG plans and metrics, or if you're an ecologist or conservationist advising these groups as well. I've got a few more slides on BNG if anybody wants to come back to it, but I didn't think it was necessary at the moment. But how this could affect you, really. So when we map the priority areas, we will be mapping locations in proximity to important areas for nature. This will be a public available map, so it will show nature reserves, SSSIs, local wildlife sites, and the priority areas around those. So you may have land or you may have projects in those areas, so you'll want to be aware of it. It should align with current plans and projects, but we need to have the most relevant and up-to-date information from those people who are delivering these projects. And it will focus on species and habitats creation, management and restoration. So the overarching priorities should support existing strategic priorities, and it will ultimately suggest a coordinated response at landscape scale. And those measures which we agree collectively will align with current objectives and contribute to both local and national environmental objectives, as well as other environmental benefits. We don't know exactly what's going to happen with the funding, especially with elections coming up. But we do know that local nature recovery strategies are very attractive and they should provide access to funding. Obviously, at the moment, BNG is the way to go, ELMS and other grant schemes. But we're hoping by having a local nature recovery strategy which really delivers for us and meets our local objectives and is a collective, it will be much more attractive for all of the money that we need to raise to deliver the strategy. Okay, I'm just going to turn my head so I can look at the local habitat map. So I wanted to show you this. So the local habitat map itself is blobs on a page. So we're not sharing any commercial data here. What the baseline local habitat map does is it identifies and demonstrates where the areas of importance are in our strategy area. So on here we have SSSIs, national nature reserves, irreplaceable habitats, including sites like ancient woodland, as well as local wildlife sites. So these are aligned and in with the national policy planning framework. These are the sites which already have very strict restrictions on them when it comes to planning. So this is our baseline of what we're looking at. We will do our ecological modelling against this, and you will start to see some of these areas connect. That's what we hope. We want to find the right method of connecting, enhancing some of these very important areas for nature, but also where there's not a lot going on, finding ways to use connectivity through agricultural land, might be through hedgerows, river networks, canals, highways, railways. There's lots of different innovative ways to connect together all of these very important areas for nature. We're going to have a really good interactive map to share with everyone soon, but I wanted to give you a first look at this map, just showing, I've taken the OS map off underneath just for clarity, but I just wanted to show everybody where the most important areas for nature currently are in our area, and we'll soon have another layer to layer over the top of that of where areas could be important for nature and where action should take place. We've nearly done, you'll be pleased to know. So how are we going to go about doing it? So assessing and prioritising, the local nature recovery strategies will map and propose the right measures for nature in the right places. So we've had over 950 species recorded in Leicestershire, Leicester and Rutland, which have now been assessed as species of conservation concern against the criteria that the LNRS states. To support landscape scale species recovery, we're looking at a species and habitat approach. So responsible authorities are encouraged to group candidate species into habitat-based assemblages or species assemblages wherever possible. These assemblages should be based on species that have shared potentials to benefit from the same recovery measures. So they might comprise of species associated with a single habitat. In my made-up example here, woodland habitat, but they might comprise of species associated with multiple habitats. Theoretically, as an assemblage could have hundreds of species from across taxa in it, as long as they all benefit from the same measure. The habitat and species priorities will inform decisions on proposed measures and where to take them. So, for example, woodland creation and management may be good in some areas, but improvements to grassland management may be prioritised in other areas. So priority areas will have proposed measures aimed at having the greatest benefit for nature in that local area. So where species have been mapped, where habitats have been mapped, is most likely to impact the type of measures being prioritised in that area. The simple way of saying it is, we don't just want woodland everywhere, we don't just want grassland everywhere, we don't just want wetland everywhere. There's a right place for the right measure and to link it all together nicely. So what we want to know, and we'll be coming out face-to-face from May, June into July, but we want to know from people now and ongoing where action for nature has taken place or is being planned, things that we might not already be aware of, where housing and developments are being planned. We do have access to local plans and we are factoring those into our models, but there might be other developments we're unaware of. It'd be great to know if nature-based solutions could be used somewhere to solve a local problem, and we could factor that in. And also where land may be available for offsetting biodiversity net gain. There isn't a register for the county yet, but one is in development, so we can still accept those records. But not just that, we'd also like to know where better access might be required to reach nature, or how we can connect certain areas up better. And then more of an organisational ask, but we want to know what your priorities, objectives and targets are. We don't want to be dismissive. We know that for the strategy to work, we need to have measures that can be delivered alongside your day-to-day. So it has to be ambitious, but it has to be achievable. So what are the barriers and challenges that the local nature recovery strategy presents you, and what are the opportunities? What we'd like to do is understand from all of the different sectors, what are the targets, what are the priorities, for example, local environmental priorities and housing development priorities, farming, food security, health and well-being. These are just examples. We will take all of those into consideration in the LNRS development. We will find the common ground, we will have discussions around compromise, and then we will propose the agreed priorities and measures which will work locally for everybody, and they will contribute to local objectives, but the national environmental objectives and other benefits as well.